All right, welcome to the conversation on TYT Network. Well, Joe Manchin has become so odious these days, even Democratic strategists are speaking out against him. Those are things that didn't used to normally happen, but they're happening. They're about to happen. You're about to see it. We've got a guest coming on right now, Nicole Brener-Schmitz. She's Democratic strategist. She's got her own company, NBS Strategies, and she used to be with Emily's List. She was political director for NARAL, used to be with the Teamsters. Nicole, welcome to TYT.
Good to be here.
All right, so Nicole, this is unusual, right? For Democratic strategists to speak out against Democratic senators. So what's going on here? What is animating you to come out and pressure Joe Manchin?
Well, I think it's on behalf of what this country needs, right? I mean, Joe Manchin has set a pretty unattainable goal here. It's very clear that there are not 10 Republicans who are going to co-sponsor or vote for the People Act. And he's offering America what is really sort of a false choice, right? It's choosing between the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Act. And that's a false choice. The bills do two different things. And he's presenting it as if these are two bills that people could pick between. And that's just not accurate. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act would do a lot for the future of this country, and it would make sure that we don't disenfranchise a whole lot of people. But the For the People Act is the only one that can undo a bunch of bad laws that have already happened. It's what's going to get dark money out of politics. It's going to end the partisan gerrymandering, and this is what America wants. We see poll after poll after poll, national and in the state of West Virginia. People are fed up with the money in politics. They're fed up with the partisan gerrymandering. They want what's in this bill. This is what the Democrats ran on, from Joe Biden in the White House to the members running for Congress. They ran on this bill and this message that this is what we're going to come here and get done. And they need to deliver on that if they plan to keep their majorities in Congress.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing out the absurdity of talking about John Lewis bill or the For the People Act. It's like saying, well, you got a point guard dribbling down the court and you could either shoot a three-pointer or kick a field goal. No,
right.
No, those two things are not related.
I call it apples and fire trucks.
Yeah. Well, look, Nicole, a lot of our audience, which is very progressive, is concerned that there's a reason why Joe Manchin is doing this, that it's not because he's principled and bipartisan. As you point out, the people of West Virginia, in a bipartisan fashion, actually want this For the People Act. My God, it polls us 79% in West Virginia. I don't know, even Trump's not that popular in West Virginia. It's literally For the People Act is more popular than Trump in West Virginia. So it's as bipartisan as it can get, but in a bipartisan fashion, Republicans and some Democrats don't want it. And so that's gonna go to my point here. Let's talk about why, first of all. My thesis is that it is his donors. He doesn't want people to see his donors. I interviewed Joe Manchin a couple years back and told him about his top 10 donors. He said, I've never seen that list before. I mean, that's absurd. Of course he knows who his donors are. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. That could very well be true. I personally also think that the senator quite enjoys being at the center of the conversation and yielding this power and believing to be the most powerful person in the Senate. He's always criticized the process, right? Like that's what he really has issue with here. He co-sponsored this bill last Congress. He speaks about the items in it frequently. He doesn't have a problem with the policy. He's fighting about a process, and that's unfortunate. I think a lot of it is to keep him in the center. A lot of people after the op-ed came out Sunday were trying to claim that this bill was dead. I don't have to remind you or any of these wonderful viewers that you have how many times we said the ACA was dead. It is not, but we called it dead a million times before it finally hit the president's desk and was signed into law. So it's not dead yet. We need to keep up this pressure. And at some point, Senator Manchin is going to have to realize that he is going to have to make a choice. Is he going to continue on a unattainable quest to have a bipartisan bill, or is he going to make sure that millions of Americans are not disenfranchised?
So that's right, and a lot of people are continuing to put the pressure on, which I love. Reverend William Barber, who's a courageous moral leader, is bringing hundreds of clergy down to Joe Manchin's office in West Virginia on Monday as part of Moral Mondays and the Poor People's Campaign. Everybody should check that out and participate if you can in West Virginia. Because in West Virginia, we know 8 out of 10 of you actually want the For the People Act. So go in a bipartisan fashion and pressure Joe Manchin. But Nicole, you're a Democratic strategist, and honestly, a lot of people are now concerned that some Democrats don't want this. So yes, a big majority of Democrats do want this. I think if you told me a big majority of Democrats want to raise corporate taxes back to 35%, I wouldn't believe it. It's just not true. I think the majority of establishment Democrats do not want that. But if you said a majority of the Democrats do want For the People Act, yes, I believe that, right? But there are some Democrats who don't want the dark money donors exposed. And by the way, there's some Democrats who don't mind the gerrymandering because they're in very, very safe seats. So it's not just Joe Manchin. So how do you deal with the problem of some wing of the Democratic Party that actually is not in favor of Joe Biden's agenda and are hiding behind Joe Manchin?
Well, but the reality is that they have co-sponsored it and that they have pledged that they're going to vote for it. So it really does come down to Senator Manchin sort of being the issue right now, because whatever some of their inner thoughts are and the chatter behind closed doors and hiding behind what Manchin is putting out there publicly, their names are on it and they've made commitments. So they will be voting for it to move forward.
But Nicole, Joe Manchin also co-sponsored it.
Last Congress.
Okay, and Nicole, but you see the frustration, right? And that's why you're frustrated and you're on here, right? And so I guess, let me tell you one more story and then ask you for a reaction inside DC, et cetera, right? Tim Ryan used to come on this show probably more than any congressman. And when he started his career, and we've been around forever, for about 20 years. So he used to come on all the time. He's a real go-getter, et cetera. He co-sponsored Medicare for All, ran for president. I caught up with him in Iowa and asked him, are you in favor of Medicare for All? And he said, no, if I'm president, I won't pass it. But you co-sponsored it, right? So there's a frustration, and it's not a little. It's a lot. There's a giant frustration building up in the Democratic base that the Democrats don't actually mean anything they say. So do Democrats in DC understand the rage that is building?
I think that they do. I think there's an understanding of the frustration of the base. I think that is some of the concern about this holdup on For the People. I mean, this is what Democrats campaigned on. And this idea that one senator might hold it up because this is what we've told the American people we are going to be about and we are going to pass. And I think that they should have a lot of concern, not to put this too cynically, but if they want to keep their majorities, because if we have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, and we can't get something done, that's going to infuriate a lot of people. And it's very frustrating. But I don't want to say that folks can never change their mind, right? Tim Ryan actually has one of, I think, the best change his mind stories. He started his career as an anti-choice Democrat and is now a proudly pro-choice Democrat. And so I don't want to say that politicians should never have shifts in their mindsets or theories and changes in what they would be co-sponsoring, supporting. I think people can evolve and do that, but we need to be looking at what we campaigned on. And For the People Act just is what makes sense. Let's get this dirty money out of politics. Let's get partisan gerrymandering taken care of. Let's make sure that everybody is able to exercise their constitutional right to vote.
Okay, so I'm gonna say one quick comment about Ryan. Can I ask you one more thing? So look, I should know better than anybody. I used to be a Republican and now I loathe Republicans. So of course people can change. But changing from I think everybody should have health care to I don't think everybody should have health care is weird. But anyways, let's move on. So if For the People Act doesn't pass, what do you think happens? How can Republicans? I know they've got all the voting rights bill. They've introduced 43 different, or they've introduced anti-voting rights basically in 43 different states. It's passed a dozen states. But what is in the For the People Act that would protect us from that we won't get if Manchin gets his way?
Well, it's what can roll back a lot of what the states have started passing. So the solution, if it doesn't happen, is we have to start going into the states and handling the repeals within them. We saw Merrick Garland came out very strongly today with a speech on behalf of the administration on protecting voting rights. And this is where, it's one of those things, Democrats, every cycle I hear we're going to care about state legislatures this cycle. And I hope people start to realize that those are just as important and serious races as Congress, because this is where a lot of these laws are happening. And we're going to have to be able to flip some chambers to repeal some of these horrific laws, or they have to go through the courts. We're going to have long legal battles.
All right, last question, Nicole. If Manchin and Sinema just flat out vote no, there's nothing you can do. What happens? Do we just go, oh well, I guess there goes our agenda, or are there any consequences?
No, I think there will be consequences. I think there'll be political consequences. I think we're going to figure out what the next path forward is legislatively. I think that the filibuster conversation becomes a louder one and a bigger one. I think we do look at what other pieces can be passed. I mean, this is just, we're not going to give up on this. The Democrats are not going to do that. Nancy Pelosi came out with a very strong dear colleague after Senator Manchin's op-ed last Sunday, making it crystal clear that House Democrats were not going to walk away from this. So I don't like to underestimate Nancy Pelosi when she says she's going to get something done. I take her word for it.
I don't know about that. Okay, okay, Nicole, if they pass the entire For the People Act, including the anti-corruption parts, the matching funds, the revealing of the dark money donors, etc., I will be shocked. I would be. There's no force on earth that'll get me to believe that they're going to do that. But they have to do at least the bare minimum. It looks like they're going to right now. If they pass none of it, it's an epic disaster brought to you by corporate Democrats like Joe Manchin. And Nicole, I appreciate that you're fighting back on it. So thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.